Okay. So here's Lot L, Savage Land Edition. Like we went through, the program will, it gives you everything. It even marks the bearings and distances for each line that you entered in. Um, the next one, Lot J, the same thing. It's a little more legible. Uh, on the east side, we have the right-of-way and the 5-foot dedication and iron pipes. I always like to give as much detail in about the properties as far as the acres, the volume pages, the owner, what tract it's out of. That way you're not having to reference back to all those deeds and shuffle through a lot of paperwork. So here we have Lot K, and then we have good deeds and we have bad deeds. So here's another one of the adjacent lots, Lot O2. It's pretty legible even at this screen grab and at this scale. You can see everything. There's a lot of things clearly marked, a lot of pipeline markers, a lot of right-of-ways and easements. But then we have plats that look like this, and these are extremely zoomed in snippets, and still they're blotchy, and zeros and eights are hard to distinguish, threes and fives, fours and twos. And these become a problem when you're dealing with misclosures, and you're like, well, did I enter that in right? Should have been a 3 instead of a 2? When you get old descriptions like this or bad copies, it's just unavoidable, but it's something you have to deal with. And then descriptions themselves. Here's some old descriptions from the 50s and 60s and 70s, and they're typed, but they're still legible, even though that's a bad scan right there. But then you'll get some old ones. This one is from 1893, and despite that, a lot of the descriptions from those areas, especially like the GLO, they're more calligraphy style, and those are really hard to read. This one is actually very good penmanship, but the description of easements, for some reason, in general, are always usually very vague in older descriptions. So this one basically, it describes a rectangle, going northeast, so many varas, and southeast, whatever, back to the place of beginning. They're describing that Tom Wheeling tract, which is basically 100 acres, and that little sketch, the two lines going from north to south on it, is the easement, and they expect you to locate that easement based off that. Now, considering that our tracts combined are about 5 acres, and this is a 100-acre tract, and that's all I have to go by, this was causing a pretty big issue on this survey. And then we have, some recent plats like this that show a lot of pipelines, and this was very helpful, especially for the ones on the west side that are going straight north that will affect the subject property. But you're going to have the good, the bad, and, the uglier. And so going back to Schedule B and those pages and pages of easements, here's kind of a quick snippet of, I'd say about 85-90% of these documents are just pipeline easements and right-of-ways. So this was a big hurdle for this project. And the problem is, a lot of those, I'd say 60 to 70%, all reference the same volume and page. And that volume and page basically took the original Lot L survey, and somebody just sketched over it and hand wrote and drew in a lot of these pipelines and easements. And yes, they numbered them, that's all great, but it's a bad scan, it's a bad copy, it's barely legible. And the note at the bottom, items 1 through 13 reference a title binder by Stewart Title Company. Now, we could not, or Stewart Title could not find this binder number 44200, and so these numbers were kind of meaningless to us. So we had to do a lot of additional research and follow little breadcrumbs and clues that would lead us to plats like this. And again, it's just a hand-drawn sketch, and the Tom Wheeling tract, but you have a water line under a railroad and Shell Road, which has since doesn't exist, or it's renamed something different. And then on the east side, you have Country Club. Now, there's only one country club that I know, and that's off of Everhart. But back in the day, there used to be a country club downtown, and that's the one it's referencing to. This happens to be above Interstate Highway 37, so this is one of the easements that didn't affect the property. And the only way we found that out is through doing more research. So we have all of our deeds drawn, and it's kind of, they look like puzzle pieces. So that's what we got to do. We got to start creating our working sketch. We start placing the deeds together. Now Carlson is great and lets me set a projection in my CAD drawing, and that allows me to bring ortho images, aerial images from Tinris into the CAD environment, and it allows me to place these deeds. And so here we have Lot O, Lot O2, and then we're having H, I, and all of the adjacent tracks are now being added. And we're placing these based on what's called for in the corners and kind of putting them together piece by piece. And here we have the Interstate Highway 37 right-of-way. And, you know, we take away this aerial image and you kind of see a better idea of all the deeds that are kind of being placed together. And this is the working sketch now. We kind of fit them as best possible, but these fit pretty well for, you know, traditional surveying project. But what about that Schedule B, that nightmare of all those easements? Well, here it is again. It looks like a Skittles commercial. You can almost taste the rainbow. All these pipeline easements, and this isn't even all of them. This is only the ones that we could actually track down and somewhat figure out. So now it's time to go do some field work. So this is also, if you spend the time to do this correctly, this is the easy part. Carlson allows you to just select points, and since everything's projected correctly, the XY coordinates that I get for these points off of this aerial usually get me within feet, sometimes inches, if I do it good enough, of the actual location of these monuments. So let's take away the deeds, and it may be hard to see, but you can see those blue dots with the yellow numbers, and those will reference. I can export those points into a CSV text file or an Excel file, and we can upload this straight to the data collector, so there's no manually entering anything, and we can start looking for points. So field prep and project management, what I like to provide the guys is I'm going to need to give them control in the scope of work. We have a field request form that kind of fills out all the contact information, who they're going to meet, where the site is, the NGS data sheets. For this specific project, we use existing control that we had already set. I'm going to give them some aerial maps, and it's going to have the working sketch overlaid, and it's going to have the calcs, and those calc numbers will be there, referencing, you know, what's in their data collector. Sometimes I give them Google Earth images with directions, and sometimes even DXF and shape files that they can also upload into their controller. Now, you also want to keep the contact frequent with the client and the landowner and your field crew. You always want to keep the client up to date. Always feed them information, whether you're behind schedule or ahead of schedule. Keep them up to date. If necessary, you need to contact some landowners as a basic courtesy or to gain access. You want to meet with your field crews and get them debriefed on the scope of work. And of course, you want to schedule the field work. So here we are set up on control point. It's actually across the street from Contractors Builder Supply. The initial, well, I have lease work. I'm used to doing oil and gas, but the initial field work, the first time out, I'm doing a lot of digging with the other guys, and we're locating iron pipes, concrete monuments, iron rods. We're shooting in fences and existing structures, but we're trying to tie down these tracks. Here's some iron pipes. Left one's a little corroded, but the right one's in really good condition. Here's some more iron rods that are set in a parking lot. Here's another iron rod. Take note of how far it is from that fence. So, fences aren't always a boundary line. Here's a shot of the yard and back of Contractors Builder Supply, and it looks busy, but we're only concerned on permanent structures and any improvements and easements. Oh man, looks like we're getting to another 10-minute mark. I don't have much longer, but I'm going to cut this video short just so I can get it uploaded to YouTube.